Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Oh, thank you. And happy Epiphany. Today is the 12th day of Christmas and the day of Epiphany. It's the day that we remember the story of the spiritual seekers we call the Magi or the wise men. You know, the story of the Magi ranks right up there with Christmas and Easter stories in terms of capturing our imagination. So much has been made about this story about which we know so little. They were not kings, and there were not 3 of them. More than likely, there was a large group of them, at least. There were not 3 according to Matthew. And we don't really know who they were, or where they came from, or how many of them were in the group. We do not know how long it took them to get to Bethlehem, or how old Jesus was by the time they found him. There are lots and lots of theories and interpretations. What we do know is that this story is so important that it is recorded in the Bible, in the Gospel of Matthew. And it's a story for us. It's not that the facts don't matter. It's just that they may not matter as much as the story. So today, as we gather on this Epiphany Day, I want to invite you to listen to the story. Let it come to life inside of you. Think about how this story affects you. Does it make you want to know more? Does it open you up to new possibilities? Does it increase your capacity for joy? Pay attention to how the story affects others who listen to the story, perhaps even those next to you in the pew. Listen to this story. This is a version that's a co-creation between author Barbara Brown Taylor with a few tweaks by me. Once upon a time, there were 3 very wise men who were all sitting in their own countries, minding their own business, when a bright star lodged in the right eye of each one of them. It was so bright that none of them could tell whether it was burning in the sky or in their own imaginations. But they were so wise that they knew it did not matter all that much. The point was this: something beyond themselves was calling them. And it was a tug that they had been waiting for all of their lives. Each one in his own country had tried all kinds of things. They had tried books and magic, astrology, even reflexology. One had spent his entire fortune learning how to read and write poetry. Another had lived on nothing but dried herbs boiled in water. And the third, believe it or not, could walk on hot coals. But it did nothing for him except give a great sense of relief when it was all over. Each and every one of them were glad for a reason to get out of town, because that was clearly where the star was calling them. Out. Out away from everything they knew about how to manage and survive. Out, away from the reputations that they had built for themselves. Out, away from those high expectations and the disappointing returns. And so they set out, one by one, each believing that he was the only one with a star in his eye, until they all ran into each other on the road to Jerusalem. From a distance, each one of them thought it was a mirage that they were seeing. You know, that twinkling reflection that's made out of vapor and heat. But as they drew near to one another, they saw the star they had in common. And it was kind of like a secret handshake that made them brothers before they had even met each other. They were unanimous that the star was leading them to Jerusalem, which of course made perfect sense because they had every reason to believe they were on their way to meet a king. Along the way, they encountered King Herod, of course, and that encounter left them feeling most uneasy. And after they moved on from him, they continued their journey, and once they were out in the night air again, they could see the star clearly and followed it right to the doorway of a one-room house in Bethlehem. It was a perfectly nice place, modest, but well-built. It was just not quite the kind of place that they had expected to find a king. There was a dog sniffing around. Someone was practicing the lute next door. The smell of dinner was still in the air. If they had chosen this place themselves, they might never have knocked. But the star had chosen it. And so they knocked. And when the door opened, the couple inside were most surprised. Their arms full of gifts, the wise men crowded into the small space, bumping their turbans on the rafters and snagging their clothes on the rough furniture. They looked around, and all they could see was the baby. The baby who was not afraid. The baby whose bright eyes shone with the same star that they had seen before they ever left home. It was he, whoever he was. They really did not have a clue. But they knew what to do. They got on their knees and worshipped him. Then they gave him the things they had brought him, and all of a sudden they could see that they had brought all of the wrong things. Things that he had no use for. They should have brought goat's milk and a warm blanket and something shiny to hang over the crib. Oh, how could they have known or even guessed? But the child's parents were so gracious. They thanked the foreigners for the gifts and held them up for the baby to see. And then, to the wise men's complete alarm, the child's mother picked up the baby and handed him around so that the wise men had the opportunity to hold that soft, living weight in their arms. In the morning, the wise men could not find their stars anywhere. They looked in all the corners and under the chairs, and the baby's mother even shook out the blankets to see if the stars were hiding there. But after an initial panic, the wise men said, "Never mind." They did not need them anymore. They had found what they were looking for, and they could never lose that. As much as they hated to, they guessed that they had better be on their ways. No, they would not be going back All three of them had had the same dream that told them to steer clear of Jerusalem as if they needed to be told. If anyone in Jerusalem had known anything at all, they would have been there instead of in Jerusalem. Besides, none of their old maps would work anymore. They would find a new way home. So the wise men picked up their packs, which were now much lighter than when they came, and they lined up in front of the baby to thank him for the gifts he had given them. For this home and the love here, the first wise man said. For this baby, the second wise man said. For a really great story for us to tell all the world, said the third wise man. And then they trooped outside, kissed the baby goodbye, and went home by another way. Each of us here to worship this Epiphany have our own unique story of our path to the manger. We are all here due to the prompting of God, who initiates our asking and our seeking and our finding. And God invites all of us to receive the gift of Jesus. It is the beginning of a new year. It is the season of Epiphany, a season called manifestation. The light of God shines most clearly through Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is revealed as the light of the world for all people. It is a time for us to take a look at how we live as faithful disciples. To ask ourselves what kind of disciple we will seek to be or to become in light of this revelation of Christ. It is a time for us to ask how we will live from the inside out. How we live with the insight that God gives us to live each day faithfully, to share the light of Christ with those we meet. When we tell stories like this, the stories of our encounter with God, whether we do so in our community of faith or in our own relationships or from the depths of our hearts, we are sharing from the inside out about the presence of God in Jesus in our lives. The Word made flesh, Emmanuel, God with us. In this new year, may this story of Jesus as the light of the world be yours. And together, may we tell this good news to all the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.